Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby, live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to it. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and it is Monday. Ooh, man. Oh, I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you got lots of stuff done, or maybe you didn't, as the case may be. Whatever you want. That's whatever you want. We are ready to go, and it was a beautiful weekend for me. I mean, lots of nice weather. And a good chance to relax and to kind of hang out and not do anything. And then on top of it, to get some of my honeydew list done. Got a chance to clean up the studio finally. It's been a day, man. It's been a day or two since I done cleaned up all my little boxes of stuff and tools and equipment and wires, and man, it was a good 2 or 3 hours just kind of cleaning things up and trying to tidy up and pack some certain things away. And it was a thing. And I feel so much, it's one of those things where you feel every time you walk in, you're like into a room, you're like, oh, I've really got to take care of that, but I really don't have time right now. And you're a little stressed out by it. And now I'm all better. Now I'm all better. So it was a good weekend, I guess is what I'm trying to say overall. Fantastic. Thumbs up. All right. So today we're continuing our, I was just going to say digression. That's really not the word it's not the word I wanted to use. Today we're continuing our progression through a list of veritable candidates who are running for office here in the state of Alaska. We're going to start off in hour one with Brandy Pennington, who is running for House District 9. That's the Girdwood district, held by former Representative Ladishaw. And we're going to talk with her about her run for that seat and all the details of what's happening, here in the state, and her thoughts on state government and the budget and schools and, all the normal stuff. And I'm going to get that full rundown. Then in hour two, we're going to be joined by Nick Begich. Nick Begich, who is going to come on board and talk with us about his run for the U.S. House of Representatives for our single sole seat in Congress. So there we go. We're going to talk about that in hour two. So are we ready? Buckle up, Buttercup. You ready to get all this done and get things ready to rock and roll? I think we should. I see that Brandy is in the green room and she's eating all the virtual donuts. I mean, I don't know what to think. I mean, they have no calories at all, but they are delicious. Don't eat them all. I need one or two of those. Let's go over there right now and see, hopefully everything works out. And she joins us this morning to discuss. Good morning, Brandy. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Tired.
Tired? Come on. It's Monday. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, and you had all those virtual donuts. So, I mean, what more could you ask for, right? The sprinkle ones and all that kind of stuff. So Brandy, let's get started. Let's just kick things off and see what's going on. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are, where you came from, and so just a little bit of that. If this was a Marvel movie, it would be your hero backstory, your Genesis backstory, where you came from. Tell us about it.
Sure. So, born and raised here in Anchorage, and I have spent the majority of my life working. I went to work at 10 and have subsequently held a job, multiple jobs since that time in my life. And so I'm very well equipped to move into state government with my background in the planning board, serving on various committees that worked on shaping public policy. And I'm happy to be on your show.
So tell us a little bit about. Born and raised. You came up. What's your background in work? And then again a little bit about planning board. That kind of stuff. Let's go a little deeper here. What else is? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess really it's never really been about me. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I worked in the restaurant industry for 14 years. That was a really interesting time in my life where I learned a lot about, frankly, people and expectations, and I really learned how to grind. I moved in high school to banking and went to University of Alaska Anchorage, where I served as student body vice president. We legislated and lobbied for a new library. We instituted the Seawolf Shuttle. We had we put together the first homecoming week, if you will. So we took it from a more commuter campus to bringing it into a more traditional university style. And I'm not sure if they maintain that yet or not. I have 5 boys and they're amazing, and a wonderful husband. And we do a lot of fishing. We go to fish camp on the weekends and recreate on the Kenai Peninsula, much like a lot of Alaskans. I don't really as far as me personally, I'm a pretty open book. If people have questions about the things that I do, or they're interested in coming with me to do the things that I like to do, then I'm open in that aspect. I guess, I spend a lot of time working with less fortunate populations just because it's a special interest of mine. And that's about it. I like to read. Yeah, you can see that. I have tons of books.
No, that's all good. So tell us a little bit about when you lost your mind and decided that boy, I really want to jump into this whole political thing. This sounds like fun. I don't have enough to do with 5. By the way, with 5 boys, I have 5 kids, and but luckily 3 girls and 2 boys. So the girls all came first. They were a little easier. The boys sometimes not so much. So I mean, you're a busy mom. You got lots of things going on. What exactly made you do it? I mean, was it a single thing? Was it a combination of things? What pushed you over the edge into madness here to decide to jump into the state race and do this?
Yeah, I don't see it as madness. I see it as like a clear path for me in my future, and to share my skill set and unique capacity to solve problems. Sort of like you described your weekend. Every time I walk into, or every time I look at what's happening, I'm like, this is like a dumpster fire with no one who has a plan or a skill set to solve it. And these aren't complicated issues. The state budget is, for the most part, the same thing every year. And yet every year we have these arguments over how will the money be spent, et cetera. So I guess watching, born and raised here, and having lived in District 9 for the majority of my adult life, actually my almost even youth, you could say, I've watched gradual decline, and it's not acceptable. And I believe I know it's time for District 9, which is the economic engine for the state of Alaska, to have representation that's going to fight for their resources and services and bring money back to our district to improve the roads. We don't have to ask the state to spend more money, but to ask for a better section of that pie. The majority of my district is covered by state road and state park. And there's no reason why why the state isn't reinvesting in our district and community.
Let's pick that apart a little bit. You said, you're seeing it as a decline, and what do you classify as that? What do you mean when you say, we're in, you were watching it, you're seeing it happen. They fight every year over the budget, but you're seeing that decline. Tell me, what is that? What do you mean by decline?
I mean, it's everywhere. It's the fact that we have state parks without parking. I don't know where do you want to start? We have roads that have massive potholes, almost sinkhole-ish. Rabbit Creek services the majority of the upper hillside, and yet it's 2 lanes, no shoulder, no lighting, no sidewalks. That's a problem. Education standards in this community, I actually didn't share this. I spent 7 years working for the district in multiple capacities, and the expectation for student performance and for parent responsibilities in the classroom has exponentially declined. In fact, in some aspects, it's not even there. I could probably go on. If you have you want to narrow it down, we can talk about that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, let's talk for just a second here about education. We're coming up on the break here in a couple minutes, but this last session, all we heard about was education, right? I mean, that was the subject this session that seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the room, right? It was education, and of course we heard the news media going on and on about how we'd flat funded it. It was we hadn't added any money to it, and if we didn't do what needed to be done, catastrophe for the state, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria kind of thing, and that's what all the legislators were fighting about. Now, we know for a fact that was not necessarily true. We have not flat funded education. The BSA has had a slight increase, but over the last 35 years, we're spending 35% more now than we were 18 years ago. And over the last 7 years, while the BSA has remained relatively flat, we still fund over the BSA to the tune of between $10 and $176 million a year, every year. So where do you stand on that discussion? If you were on the House floor this last session, where would Brandy Pennington have been on this issue of education, the BSA funding? Is that the solution to fixing education, or is it some other form of funding? Is it something to fix the way that the education system works? What would have been your thing?
I probably stepped into a pot right now. Okay, so education and funding education is really important to my district, and I need to hear that. I do hear that. I have done really well for my family in life in general because I'm very fiscally responsible. I'm great with money. I have an excellent credit score. I understand how it works, and money doesn't always solve problems. In some cases, it creates problems. 34% of the state budget is set aside for education. That's a huge chunk of the pie. And you can always put more money into more programs and opportunities, but a lot of that money isn't trickling down into the classroom or higher pay for teachers. And in some cases, a lot of teachers, they don't get into the industry for money, but money does help.
Sure, you still got to live, right? It's
Right.
like they also didn't get into to be monks. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. What is the average salary? 75, 80K for 170 days out of the year? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, plus benefits. Yeah. So
Plus
you're
benefits. So
yeah.
that's a pretty respectable income for someone who has for a professional with a 4-year degree.
Right.
There are people who work for this. I don't even think the previous mayor made more than 85. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw disclosed online. I could be wrong. But what I'm saying is, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. Public schools in Alaska are failing. And instead of arguing about should we give them more money, should we not give them more money, we need to talk about why are we failing? Why is the consumer leaving us? Why are people electing to pay federal income tax? And in Anchorage particularly, 49% of the property tax base goes to the Anchorage School District. That's a lot. Go look at your tax bill. right? An average tax bill in my district is about 10 grand. 49% of that is going to ASD plus state, plus federal funding, plus grants, plus so much more, so much more. We have to ask ourselves, like, why are people electing to pay state, federal, or pardon me, not state, but federal taxes, municipal taxes, and then still pay for private school or alternative options? Why are more families moving toward charter schools? What products and services are important to them that a neighborhood school should be offering? I'm a huge proponent of neighborhood schools. Unfortunately, my family, it just hasn't worked out for us. We tried getting into Rabbit Creek, and Rabbit Creek was pretty less response. So we had a woman living with us, and she didn't quite fit the mold, and she went down to register her kids, and they gave her a really hard time about whether or not she actually lived in the district or that zone. And so I had to go down, and then they gave me a really hard time because they're like, you look really young. Bring me your ownership papers. They wanted to see the warranty deed of my home. And I'm like, Anchorage School District has an open campus policy. So there's just so much to talk about. And realistically, I have like 2.5 hours worth of sleep. So you'll have to forgive me. I'm definitely not on my best.
Not on your A game. All right.
Well,
Hold on.
I just have to tell you, like, Michael, I don't think that throwing more money at the problem, so to speak, is going to solve it. What we need to do is sit down. We need to break it apart. We need to create segments of opportunities for improvement. And then we need to figure out, when we do bring more funding in, how do we assign accountability to it, right? You just don't want to write a blank check and say, just soldier on, keep going the way you are, because it's not working. How do we make sure the funding goes to the classroom, to the educator, to the student? Those things have to be outlined before it's okay to talk about like an endless pool of opportunity.
Brandy Pennington is our guest. She's a candidate for State House in District 9. We're going to continue in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Duke's
Hey,
On
Michael.
Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, now we're in the break. Brandy Pennington is our guest. Yes, Brandy, you were saying something.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to interrupt your commercial.
No, that's fine. It was just we were leaving to the commercial break. Can you hear the music? Can you hear the guy talking and all that stuff?
I did. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So before we come back from this, you're going to hear a ding before we come back. It'll give us the warning to let us know we're about to rejoin the radio. So if you're talking and you hear the ringside bell like a boxing ring, stop talking because we're about to rejoin. No, this is it's an interesting discussion because I think that you're hitting on something that, I mean, I've been talking about for a long time, which is education as a product. Education in anywhere, but in this state is a product. And we have not done a good job we're not producing a high quality product. If we were a widget factory, we'd be the one producing the ones with lots of defects because we're scholastically, we're in the bottom. We've got only a 76 now % graduation rate. So that means 1 in 4 don't even graduate. And that hasn't changed. That's only gone up 2 percentage points or so since Sarah Palin was in office. So we're obviously not doing something right. Yet at the same time, from that same time frame, we've increased education spend by over 20%. And we're still not getting a good product. And that's problematic, to say the least. I mean, that is for them to continue to come back to you hat in hand and say, well, we'll get it right this time. We only need more money, right? MOAR, more. They just want more all the time. And that's not the solution. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. I mean, I think at some point we have to say that something is fundamentally flawed in the way that we're doing this.
That's exactly it. That's how I feel. And it's hard to say that to people in a 10-second conversation on their porch. But consistently, I hear how important education is to this community and that teachers need to be paid more. And I don't, I guess I should probably save it for when we get back on air, but the schools are doing so much more than educating. And in some aspects, it's a blessing, and other ways it's problematic because we have failing test scores. I mean, if as a community, we've decided that testing children is how we measure whether or not it's working, it's not working.
Right.
But
By any metric, by any metric or yardstick, that ain't good, right? I mean, if this is the best we can do with what we've been given, then that's not what it is. And at the same time, if somebody says, well, teachers need to be paid more, well, I mean, the starting salary at the Anchorage School District is like $57,000 a year in salary plus benefits for 9 months worth of work. So, you're talking about $80,000 in income and benefits for 9 months. That's not bad. I mean, it's not bad. And it grows, and it just grows from there. That's just the starting, wage with step increases and everything else. Yeah. $100,000, no big deal, in the course of 9 or 10 years. And that's pretty good for 9 months worth of work. So yeah, it's, again, it's not the highest, but it's not the lowest. We're like number 6 in the nation for teacher salaries. So we're doing okay. But at the same time, does the money even actually reach into the classroom? And I think you nailed the nail right on the head there, because we're only getting between 45 and 50% of those dollars of, like, for example, the BSA into the classroom. So is that even an argument that we should be having at this point?
That's exactly it. Thank you. You're clearly a lot more eloquent than I'll ever be.
That's why I do this for a living, So, all right. Well, the ding means we're going to rejoin. Actually, the ding was a little early, so we're going to rejoin here in about 30 seconds. And we can repeat and talk about that here when we get back. We're going to hit on some of the other issues as well, Brandy. Some of the other big high visibility targets that came about in this last election cycle, this last session. And we'll continue that here in just a second. Brandy Pennington is our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio, folks. Make sure you like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y things. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I'm a perfect angel. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, all right, maybe a little bit of a pain in the... welcome back to the program. It is the Monday edition of the show. Everybody's feeling Monday today, including our guest, Brandy Pennington, who's running for State House in District 9, which is the Girdwood area. And we were just talking during the break about education and coming back to that final piece and part about it. We'll let go of education here, but you were saying, part of the problem is essentially the money that we're talking about, because we keep hearing about this BSA funding. We did increase it, one-time increase, but there's still going to be a push. We heard the number 1413, right? And we're not even halfway there yet. But the problem is this money is not making it into the classroom. It's essentially getting subsumed by administrative overhead costs, brick and mortar schooling, maintenance, all these other things. And it's not getting down into the heart of the classroom, which unfortunately, that's been the argument the whole time. If we don't get this BSA up, these children are going to all suffer, right?
It's teachers. It's literally teachers and kids. And that's all that matters. And, administrative, I think it's the way the districts are run, they're completely upside down. And I'm certain I'm offending people. Please just hear me on how we need to deconstruct what we're doing now, find solutions for the problems that stand out the most. And then it's okay to say what we're doing now isn't working. And we need to move forward because it's a growth opportunity and finding ways to educate students, because quite frankly, society has shifted about how we perceive education and how we value education is different. My district places high regard for education, but that doesn't always trickle out in the classroom. Having spent some time at South High School and in some, actually, I never went to Golden View, and at Service, which is outside of my district, there are a lot of students that don't have to take accountability because their parents take it on for them. And that's a problem. And then spending time at West High School, where I had 6 freshmen who couldn't read. And when I reported it through the appropriate channels, it came back as, well, you can't say that because it's racist. And I'm like, well, so let's unpack that statement. This is not a racial issue. This is
an academic issue.
Yeah, I'm like, this is clearly a systemic failure because these students have made it to 9th grade and have amazing coping skills, but can't read. And so it's like we were talking about in the break, the schools are doing so much more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. There are social welfare places. Like I know schools that do laundry for families who can't afford to do their laundry. And it's not like it's for the student though, right? They don't want the student to be hurt. So they're willing to do this for the student. And, you want to do speech therapy with your kid, you have to do it through the school district. So, I mean, the aspect is that it's a lot of people don't understand that it's just not about education anymore. It's a societal shift, or somehow these districts have been able to absorb a lot more of a community role, just like up, in the villages where the school is the heart and soul of their community.
Right.
So,
well, which would have been fine if they had stayed on task with their core mission, which was teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, and how to learn. If they had taught all that and they wanted to do hot lunches and be the parental babysitter for a certain number of hours a day, or do, certain things with, whatever it is, if they had delivered on the reading, writing, and arithmetic and were delivering a product that could be used, then that would be fine. But that's not what's happening. The basic core is falling away, and yet we're continuing to expend more and more and more. We talked about administrators. I mean, when I went to high school up in the interior, and I'm born and raised just like you, I mean, we had 40 teachers, probably 35, 40 teachers, and there was 12 administrators.
yeah.
Today, there's 2 to 3 administrators, depending on what district you're talking about, for every teacher. I mean, as the student population has declined, the administrative population has gone up. Some point we got to go, okay, we got too many chiefs, not enough Indians. I mean, what do we need to do to make this work? And that's a problem.
So a plan that I have in place, I've been very blessed and fortunate to meet several former principals of different schools up north and administrators here within Anchorage who are now retired that are ready to put together a focus group and make recommendations for how do we get back to the basics? How do we bring this back to reading, writing, and arithmetic, preparing students for life after the school district, after their time in education, formal education. But, I'm even open to the conversation about, does the money follow the child? I think at this point, absolutely. The money should follow the kid through the UA system if that's what they want to do. And maybe we make it a performance-based option. There's so much opportunity, and it doesn't have to be a divisive conversation. It should be everyone at the table. Let's unpack it. Let's put all our ideas out there, and let's come back with a constructive conversation about how we want to shape the educational landscape for Alaskans moving forward. We still have a large percentage of our population base whose parents don't have formal education, but have made a really good life and income. And a lot of those students are saying the same thing, like, I don't really need to go to university, or I'm not even interested in graduating from high school because my dad's a trucker and he makes this amount of money. Or, my mom does this and she makes that. And the correlation between education and funding and having a better lifestyle just it's not working anymore. It's not a motivator for a lot of people.
And I don't know how true it always was, because I mean, we've sacrificed a lot of the trades and a lot of VOTEC and things like that, and treated
coming back.
treated it with such disdain, like, oh, you're a blue collar worker, hold your nose in the air. That blue collar worker is making 150,000 bucks a year. I don't know what you're talking about, but the plumber's doing pretty damn good, if he's out there working it every day. So, I mean, I think we need to focus in on that as well. All right, let's set education aside because we've got other things to talk about. Just briefly, I want to touch on this because it was a talking point early on in this last session, and I know it's going to come back because a lot of the candidates are talking about it, and that is this idea of defined benefits for state employees. Now, we had the tiers 1 through 3, which were all defined benefit, and then we have the tier 4, which is now the defined contribution plan for retirement. And there's this push to return to defined benefits, even though currently we still owe. So we have $7 billion in unfunded liabilities to the first 3 tiers of defined benefits. So what's with all this talk? And they're saying, well, it may only cost $10 billion over 14 years, or maybe it's a break even, or nobody really seems to know. What are your thoughts on defined benefits for employees, especially when you look outside and see how many places have closed and shuttered their defined benefits programs because of the basically runaway costs? What are your thoughts on that?
You're just hitting the nail on the head on all of the very difficult conversations.
That's the job.
So just so we're clear, my platform interests are not about the conversations that have been a problem since the beginning of time and will be a problem until Jesus returns. I'm not interested in, obviously I have interest in them, but I really want to personally focus on transportation as a public safety issue for my district and bringing back goods and services to the people in my community that I serve within the first 2 years of my service. And then after that, moving into topics that are going to suck a lot of time, because ultimately this is why nothing gets done, because we get into these topics that are going to be very difficult to solve. And every year, the 60, 90, 120 days goes by and we still have these unsolved problems. So to answer your question, a couple of months ago, I attended a town hall meeting. And what happens oftentimes are that special interests, they have a tailgate party before the town hall meeting, and then they flood the town hall meeting. And, when it's a party, it's fun, right? And then they go in afterward and they all fill up the sheets. And so when these legislators think that they have these sheets full of interested parties wanting to testify, realistically, what they have is one voice who signed 300 signature lines. And although they may be calling them in random, it's the same voice that's speaking. And so this young woman stood up and she talked about how she has nearly the same job as her father, but he was able to retire with the state at 50, and she'll have to work until she's like 65 or 62 or some other frame. I can't remember the exact time frame, but I just wanted to tell her I understand what she's saying, because in retrospect, I probably should have taken a federal job like my parents had, because they had a guarantee. The pension bought loyalty. And for a lot of the boomers, but she can't retire at that age because her father was able to retire at that age. Right. And they need her to keep working to fund that. And so I don't have a response. Yes, I do believe that we need to go back to revisiting defined benefits for firemen and law enforcement. But I don't know that whole book needs to be open for everyone. There are a lot more alternatives. There are a lot of industries where maybe it's a big fat bonus at the end of certain, like at milestones. Maybe it's a performance-based salary. And I don't know. I'm not an expert in this field, frankly. And I don't think anyone has the solution, but all the conversations, again, we live in a small state and we have opportunity to make big impact. And we need to figure out, what does that mean? What keeps people? What retains them? Why do we always go back to defined benefits? I don't know if that is going to buy the millennial and the generations underneath them, because their value system for work is a lot more altruistic. It's different,
It's a
right?
whole it's a whole different critter. I mean, they're a whole different worker than like you said, Gen X, baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Z. It's a whole different feel when you get to that millennial generation. And I think you're right. They value things differently than previous generations, and that's just a fundamental shift. But we got more coming up here. We got another break. Brandy Pennington is our guest, candidate for House District 9. We will continue this conversation in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brandy Pennington is our guest here on the program. We're in the break, running right now. Brandy, I mean, here's my challenge. Everybody else in the world, you, me, everybody in the private sector, if we're lucky enough to have some kind of retirement, it's where the job pays for it. It's not something we just have to take up on our own and do our own savings plan or IRA or whatever. It's a defined contribution plan. And so my question is, why should the government employees who work for us get a better, end up with a better pension? It used to be that the idea was, oh, we'll give them a lower salary than what's paid in the private sector, and then we'll give them a golden parachute retirement to make up for it, and that will attract people to come work for government. Well, and unfortunately, in the interim, their salaries have become more and more and more competitive, and they've gotten the golden parachute. And unfortunately, as we've seen in the state, and across the nation, I mean, defined benefits have crashed and burned across the country. I mean, GM and Delta both had to be bailed out by the federal government. You've seen municipalities, the VA, the military no longer offers defined benefits. I mean, they've discovered that it's a shackle. It's handcuffing you into future generations for an unknown amount of money, and that's a big problem. You said that you thought that first responders should get, maybe we should revisit defined benefits for first responders. The problem is that they're all of these employees are covered by unions, and a union is going to say, if they get it, then we should get it. So now you'll open it up to 27,000 state employees who will have to be on that. If you get one sector in there, they'll all want to be on it. And again, it's going to cost us some, it's going to cost us some real money.
Yeah, I like I said, there's no easy answer to this, and I understand exactly what you're saying about the salary ratios and the retirement benefit and the guarantee and effectively buying loyalty. The other problem that you're going to come across is filling those jobs. Kind of like back to the whole school district issue about, if we don't get this money, we're going to have to cut 100 jobs. Well, you have 400 vacancies. What do you mean? It's the same thing. And I have a friend who works for the state, and when they did the transition into a lot of work from home, this person's job is to support the staff. And this person was able to earn a couple degrees because that person wasn't supporting the staff like they were supposed to, which indicated to that person that maybe the staff wasn't doing what they were supposed to. So for me, I like measurable outcomes. I'm willing to reward greatly when there is a product, a service, or a measurable outcome that meets expectations. So I guess to summarize this conversation, I hear what you're saying about all of the unions want a piece, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to get it. And you have to, I thought about it a lot, like the police and fire unions and the educators union and so forth. If they represent their body and they're saying this is what it's going to take to improve the service and offerings that we're giving you, then we need to have that conversation and take that, those things into consideration, what's important to the community versus what's important to these organizations.
Right.
So I don't want to discount like I have my own personal feelings, but they're and sometimes not reflective of how people in my district have said that they feel. And that's really important to me, is being transparent and honoring what's important to my district, because ultimately that's a good portion of why I'm running. We've as a person, you can have the best possible ideas, but if you don't have a legislator who's buying into it, who's willing to give you more than 7 minutes in Juneau, then you aren't going to be heard. And that's what I want my candidacy to be marked by, that I will be accessible and I will hear and take into genuine consideration the needs, the wants, and the desires of my district, because that's the entire point. So I'm really tired and I ramble when I'm tired, and you'll have to forgive me.
I guess my biggest question is, who pays for this? Who pays for and if we do an enhanced defined benefits or some kind of enhanced retire, I mean, who pays for it, right? Who pays that money? So I guess I'm asking you, who pays?
We do. The state does, the federal government does. They're talking about income and sales tax. I don't think that we need an income or sales tax. I think the state needs to do a better job of developing its resources. And I'm not specifically mentioning oil and gas. That's not the resource I'm talking about, or mining. I'm talking about the state park and its real estate holdings. Alaska has more than enough wealth. It's just been mismanaged. That's why, to the extent that they have us living in the bowl, when they have all of this vacant land, which represents opportunity for economic growth, development, better communities. People live up here.
I'm sorry, we're 20 seconds out, so we're gonna rejoin here. Brandy Pennington is our guest, candidate for House District 9. We're going to continue this discussion. Up next, we're going to talk about a fiscal plan, the PFD, and then we'll summate with anything else she wants to hit on, and then we will continue on with Brandy Pennington, candidate for State House District 9. You can find her at brandyforalaska.com. Here we go. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
That is a pinch. I mean, I got big hands, so it's a generous pinch. How about that? Continuing on, Brandy Pennington is our guest, candidate for State House in District 9. We've been talking about education. We talked about defined benefits. Let's talk about the overall fiscal plan, because you've mentioned it a couple times, Brandy. We're not being very efficient. We're not being very fiscally responsible. We haven't, our PFD, they basically been utilizing the PFD as a piggy bank for the last 8 years. If we need more spending, we just tap the permanent fund harder. And now we're down to 25-75. Only 25% is going to the people. Eventually, according to the 10-year forecast from the governor's office, we start going into deficits next year. Within the next 36 months or so, the PFD would be gone at that current consumption rate. So what's the fiscal plan? If we keep consuming all that money, eventually we're going to be out, and there's going to be some form of revenue, a tax or something else. What is your fiscal plan? Have you been following like Ben Carpenter's work or the fiscal policy working groups, or do you have some other kind of idea of a fiscal plan for the state? What do we need to do?
So when I work on something, I like to focus on that task or topic at hand so that I can understand it and master it and speak with authority about the topic. I've just for a while been following the fiscal plan. For example, Alaskans have not seen a statutory PFD since 2014. And I don't even think that they understand what that means. Most Alaskans don't even know we have a constitution, right? And so they just kind of feel like these people go to Juneau and have parties and do things, and eventually at the end of this time frame, they have a plan for how the state budget's going to work. So to answer your question, I think we're looking at like $1 billion+ deficit in a couple of years, and I have a plan for that, and it's to go all in for parks and recreation. People come to Alaska to recreate. They come to Alaska to stay and to live an Alaskan lifestyle. And that's really difficult to give them because the state hasn't invested in any of its parks or opportunities. But I feel like it's a massively untapped resource. We need to look at divesting of state holdings, specifically land, to create new communities and towns, cities, boroughs, whatever it may end up being. You look at the lower 48 and they're creating new communities all the time. And yet here we are in the Anchorage Bowl arguing over whether or not someone can have an accessory dwelling unit in their backyard to offset the cost of their taxes, which, by the way, those are running, like, if you have one built, about $250,000. That's like an absurd amount of money. So to answer your question, I don't think we need to look at a state or income or sales tax just yet. There are plenty of other opportunities. I do believe that spending money in transportation and opening up different channels to access areas of the state is really important. Eventually, it'll take care of and pay for itself. For example, I'm a big proponent of a commuter rail from Anchorage to Girdwood. I'm sure you've been following the Holton Hills project. There will be several hundreds of homes built in Girdwood, and that highway is in the best shape it's ever been. And yet people are being hurt weekly on it, accidents and traffic issues and so forth. That highway will not be able to sustain even 200 additional drivers a day. I don't see how that's possible. I believe that if we build a commuter rail apart from Alaska Railroad, which their rail capacity line is 75 miles or 65 miles per hour, they would never be able to offer the level of service that is needed to improve transportation options for communities. So, back to the state budget, yeah, it's spending more money. Do you get a return? Absolutely. And even if you don't, it's for the people. It's providing people a better lifestyle and safety, capacity, and the ability to travel within their communities. Speaking of the Alaska Railroad, we have a lot of departments that could be doing a lot better, but aren't. They're not held to any standard of accountability outside of their own. And so we have to look at where the money's going. Why is it being allocated that way? I think we need to reward departments for performance, and they shouldn't be punished for not blowing through their entire budget that year. I think it was like a decade ago, some state departments put out a survey to some of their employees asking for feedback, and they promised that those surveys would remain confidential. Well, they didn't remain confidential. And a lot of those people who in today's world may have been whistleblowers were punished for being honest about where there was waste in their departments. And we need to go back to revisiting that, like having I have family council in my home where we sit down with the boys weekly and we talk about, here's our plan, here are our expectations, what's on I'll ask even my 6-year-old, what's on your agenda this week? How can we help you meet your goals? What expectations do you have for us? Those conversations need to be had in the workplaces throughout the state to bring in more accountability, save more money, and go, like I said, the majority of my district is covered by state park and state highway systems. We need to go all in Parks and Rec.
I want to revisit real quick what you were just talking about. I mean, this idea of some commuter rail or whatever to Girdwood, or that. I mean, again, my question always comes back to
how do we pay for it?
Yeah, I mean, how do you pay for something like that? If you're talking about laying a whole nother rail, just in the example that you've given from the Anchorage to Girdwood commute, I mean, how do you
private-public partnership? The state gets out of the way. They cut all the red tape. They say, this is what we're giving you, and we'll kick in this money, and the feds will kick in this money, and then the consumer is going to have to kick in the rest. If they so it's 6.4 miles, Girdwood aside, right? So if they put a rail from Potter across the inlet, which, by the way, can happen. I'm tired of the naysayers. It's like 6.4 miles into the Sterling Flats. I personally would spend $200 to drive that bridge or take that rail instead of having to go all the way around, because you're going to blow through that in snacks, arguments, time on the highway, and gas. to open up the state of Alaska and our community to expansion, growth, and opportunity will pay for itself. And if not, Michael, then just for the people. Why can't we ever do something for us? We're here. This is a hard place to live. We need to invest in ourselves and opportunities and keep people in Alaska, skilled and talented people. Like we go back to like really the core. The last 10 years, I've watched so many skilled, talented, and capable people leave my district because life is easier in the States. It's not easy here in Alaska. This is all I know. This is where I want to be. And this is where I want my family to grow. And so I'm willing to go to Juneau, grind it out. And you're asking these questions about topics that I've spent time researching. It's difficult, especially as a first-time candidate. Fortunately, I have a lot of experience in public policy in the background and some respectable knowledge about the way state government works, et cetera. But my goal is to bring legislative session back to the road system. We have an LIO office sitting in Midtown that is largely vacant. I look at it every day on my way to work and I say, that building represents accountability. How do we get our representatives in there so that everyone can be a part of the conversation? And that's ultimately what it's about. Yeah,
Right,
don't
right.
spend money, whatever. Everyone's going to continue to argue till the end of the earth. But what I'm saying is, I want to bring accountability back. Those are the topics I'm interested in. I can't solve all of the problems. I don't have all of the answers, but I'm willing to find the people who are qualified to talk about it.
We're down to the last couple of minutes here, so I want to give you a chance to give us your elevator pitch. You know, you just ran into us, and why should we vote for Brandy Pennington, and how do we get a hold of you, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll give you the last minute and a half here. Go ahead.
Yeah. So District 9, transportation is a public safety issue for us. We need a larger slice of the DOT budget. I'm not asking the state to spend more. I'm saying that we've never had an advocate ask for more. So I'm going to ask for more. I'm going to do my best to bring legislative session back to the road system. I will be the most accessible representative District 9 has ever seen. I will meet with you. I will listen to you. I will do my best to understand what you're saying. And I will do my best to align the policies that I work on with what's important to my community. And, you know, I guess I'm sort of like the unpolitician, Michael. I know exactly what you're saying, and it's really intimidating. There are these people who stand up that have this like 30-second nailed down platform about why they're number one. I'm number one because I'm the most qualified person on this ballot for this position in this community. I'm a grinder. I've been successful in the real life. A lot of people run for office who have not been successful in their personal or professional lives, and this is the best job they'll ever have. I have a way better job that I'm willing to leave, and I'm willing to leave my agenda and the things that I want to do for myself and my family at the door to bring more opportunity in my state.
Brandy Pennington, you can find her at brandy4alaska.com. Thank you so much for coming on board. We appreciate you joining us. Hold the line for just 1 second, folks. Out of time. Nick Begich up next. All right. Brandy's still with us here. Brandy, I always like to give the candidates, in case there was something we didn't hit on, something that you wanted to talk about that didn't get discussed, or something you wanted to expand upon. I got an extra 2 minutes here for you at the end for just you and me and 60 of our closest friends on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say this morning. So I'll give you the floor here for a couple minutes in case there was something else you wanted to hit on that we didn't get to.
I don't think so. I think probably a little more opportunity for preparation would have been very helpful. But of course, you were very specific in your questioning, and I'm tired. Sorry, I'm like brain dead. I have literally, I'm sure someone's going to clip that and run a commercial. I'm brain dead. I have door knocked, 1,500 doors in the last week. And I guess really for me, running is about doing the right thing. When you know better, you do better. And I know that we can do a lot better. I know that it's hard to be okay with spending money in directions where it pays back. And that's ultimately what it's about for me. Like, it's okay to put your money where your mouth is, right? but it's not okay to just open up your pocketbook for an endless pool of whatever and whoever. What I'd like to do is have an audit, and I should have really said this on your radio show. We need to be auditing each department to find out where the waste is. We need to figure out how do we offer, because all of this, again, like you said, it's a product and a service. How do we offer better products and services? How do we improve licensing time? You know what? I didn't get to talk to you about something that's really important to me, and it's cleaning up the Alaska court system. I'm sort of like your uncandidate. There are things that are really important to me that aren't topics that people talk about. Like the Alaska court system only receives 1.5% of the state budget, yet it sees over 92,000 cases a year. And that's without us really taking crime and domestic violence and the other social ills seriously. Like Alaska has some of the highest and embarrassingly high rates of social ills that aren't being addressed. Imagine when we decide to start cracking down on them. So I would like to see the state invest in AI, frankly. I want to see people like you and I be able to file our court documents online. I'd like an opportunity to come back to your show and talk just 5 minutes about the things that are sort of the uncandidate topics that really are representative of the work that I want to do for my district and my state.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have you back on.
Thanks.
I'm sure between now, maybe between now and the primary, but definitely after the primary, since everybody who, there's only 4 people in your running for your seat. So you all 4 will move on to the general.
I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm sure you heard about that.
I apparently didn't. What are you talking about?
So we had a pact. It's still whether or not it's
the pact between the 4 or between the 3 Republicans to decide.
Yeah. So it wasn't signed. It was an agreement. It was designed to be an agreement between the parties, and meaning the 3 people, so I'm running because anyway, listen, there's one party who didn't sign it, and that agreement was meant for the 3. And the question is, why didn't that party sign it? And I'm tired. I am so tired, Michael and listeners, which I think I'm actually one of that grouping of your fanfare. So I am so tired of people coming to Alaska and changing and running for office and changing the way we live. I'm going to tell you, 5 years ago, I had someone who was brought up here by the DNC to flip Alaska, and that person gave me their entire playbook. And the last 4.5 years, I've watched all of it, right down to relocating candidates, right down to handpicking them, right down to giving them all their talking pieces, to running their campaigns. It's happening, and I can't let that happen. And unfortunately, with Republicans, we tend to circle the wagon and fire at each other. And that's not what I'm looking to do, which is why I'm like, hey, we all need to come to this agreement. And it didn't get done. And so I'm not sure how that's going to be enforced or what the legality of it is. But it's definitely going to be a soul searching moment for me. I feel like I have a clear path to victory, but in the event that I don't, ranked choice has got to go, and I'm stuck right in the middle of it. So I have to be real about, that at the same time, what's the difference? Like, you can get someone who's lukewarm, or you can get a Democrat. What's the difference?
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see, how it comes out. Like you said, if you can't get all the parties on board, then I don't know as it's binding. So you'll have to make that decision as we come up. But I got to go. All right. Thank you, Brandy. I appreciate you coming on board. We will see you. We'll see you in the future. Thank you for coming out today.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. All right. Nick Begich is our guest for hour 2. He comes on. Hello, Nick. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing this morning, Michael?
Doing good. All right. So I just wanted to test your audio before we got too far along here, and we'll I'll pull you back here. We'll be right back to you. As I said, I think I got it working. I believe it's up on Rumble right now. If you want to go check out the Michael Duke Show on Rumble, I think I finally got the whole thing. I got the whole thing working. So if you want to go check it out, you can go over to Rumble and just search up the Michael Duke Show, and you should be able to find it there. do your thing. Okay. Well, I don't know how I feel. Just don't know how I feel about it. I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to generate revenue by putting money in Parks and Rec, and if we have to spend $1 million a mile for a rail system, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting ideas, but I don't know if it really fixes everything. I'm just not sure. All right, we got to go. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yep. Live around the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, good morning. Welcome back to the program. We're continuing on now here. Hour 2 of the big radio show. Big thank you, by the way, to Donna and David, both brand new or reoccurring and rejoining members of the Common Sense Corps, helping to support the show. Again, all you have to do is go over to Patreon and help support the show over there. A couple bucks a month. We'll put a little coffee in my cup and shoes on my kids' feet. Don't you want my kids to have shoes? Dang, what's the matter with you people? All right. Also, big news today. We're simulcasting as we always do on Facebook and YouTube. Today's the first day we're doing it on Rumble as well. So Rumble is another video platform that everybody was saying that I had to get on, and I finally got around to it. So go check it out. You can go over to rumble.com and just search up the Michael Duke Show, and we'll be squared away there. All right. We're ready to do it. Let's get into it. It is our interview and time to chat with Republican for the U.S. House of Representatives for U.S. Congress. Nick Begich joins us this morning to talk more about the national scene and what's going on. And let's go over there this morning and get things rocking and rolling. Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. How are you doing this morning?
You know, it's Monday. It's good. Looks like it's going to be a pretty day. I got some work done this weekend. A little bit. I cleaned up my studio. I feel pretty good about it. It's like you walk into the room and you're like, I should clean this, but I don't really have time. And then you feel guilty about it. And it's like in the back, it's like hanging over your head the whole time. This weekend, I took a couple hours and I tidied up and did a bunch of stuff. And I feel like, wow, I feel accomplished. Now I can go watch Game of Thrones, or whatever I was. Anyway, it was a good weekend. How about yourself?
Oh, it was a wonderful weekend. Went down to Ketchikan for the Blueberry Festival this weekend and met a whole bunch of new folks. It's one of those events every year that brings people in from various communities in the region, and there were folks from all over Southeast. A lot of folks from Prince of Wales Island. So, on the campaign, you're not able to get everywhere every year, and so it's a good opportunity to meet folks that you wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to meet in person.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great opportunity to go out. I mean, Ketchikan, it's beautiful. Southeast is beautiful this time of year anyway, so good opportunity. Nick, well, let's dive right into it. Of course, I think it's been a couple 3 weeks since you were on last time, so let's Let's talk about, the scenes have changed. Biden has bowed out. Kamala is in. They tag
Yep.
teamed it on. It's a whole different ball game, or is it? Kind of question mark.
Mhm.
Give us your thoughts on the big happenings here right now.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a setup that's been a long time coming. There's been people nationally that have sort of called this. Vivek Ramaswamy was probably the first to call it. For over a year. He's been saying, "Look, Joe Biden's not going to be the nominee." A lot of people gave him heat over that prediction, but he doubled down, tripled down, said, "Look, there's just no way this guy's going to be prepared to run for office for another 4 years." And he was right, and a lot of people saw that. And we see the so-called Democrat Party, who is so concerned about the stability of democracy, actually replace their own candidate with somebody who received no votes in their primary process. And
Wait a second. I thought democracy was at risk here, Nick. That's what I heard. I heard that
Yeah.
if we didn't vote, that democracy was at risk. And then, but don't worry about voting. We've already got all the votes counted for her. I mean,
That's
it was.
right.
I mean, we've already got. I mean, I was like, who is running the show over there, and who's buying that? It was like, wow.
Well, it is a show. That's exactly right. It's a show, and it's anything but reality. We see that they wouldn't even hold their actual convention before nominating Kamala Harris. They had to do it virtually, right? So they had a virtual convention in order to get her the nomination. So it's a setup, has been from the beginning. Joe Biden ran his campaign, folks remember, from the basement. He wouldn't go out, he wouldn't campaign, he wouldn't do rallies, he wouldn't shake hands, all under the guise of COVID. And now here we are, less than 100 days away from the election, and the Democrats are doing another version of this basement strategy, where their own candidate won't take media questions. She won't appear. She's not doing much. She's given written speeches prepared by her staff and doing everything she can to avoid media scrutiny. So, it's a setup, has been from the start, and I think more and more people are waking up to that, and hopefully we've got time to wake more people up to say, hey, you know what? We have a democratic process. We have a primary process. It's there for a reason to help vet candidates and make sure that we're knowing who we're going to vote for or not vote for when we head into the voting booth.
Well, and I think that's the thing. We haven't really seen her yet in an unscripted kind of, anytime that Kamala Harris in the past, where, and of course our best optics on this is to go back and look at when she ran for president in 2020. Right, to go back and take a look at that and to watch those interviews and see when it comes time to that kind of one-on-one unscripted, kind of interview. It's not great, man. She just does not hold it together very well. And like you said, they've really got it down pat. How long have they been covering for Joe Biden? Right at this point,
Right.
How long has he been incompetence menace? Kind of thing, and they've got that kind of covered. So do they just continue that playbook with her and continue to run her from the background, this way, or do they let her out there amongst the people? And I think that's going to be the interesting point, and whether or not people buy it. I mean, again, I can't understand how people are, people, and I mean, but I can't understand how Democrats who are Democratic Party members are like, oh yeah, this is great. I mean, I didn't get a vote. Nobody got a vote. Nobody got to do anything. We held it virtually. We did this. The nod from on high came down. And so it didn't matter what the people said. It was what the party leadership said. I can't believe that if I was a member of any party and they did that, I would be outraged.
Sure. And people should be outraged. Remember, these are the same people in the media and in the political class who have told Americans for the last 4 years that Joe Biden is sharp as a tack. These are the same people who shopped that storyline that was obviously false, now undeniably false, that are now telling you, oh no, Kamala's great. She's going to be a wonderful president. She's not the most liberal senator that we had in the last 6 years. She's ready for this job. She's not ready for the job. She's hard left. In fact, she's socialist left, and they're doing a quick greenwashing job to try to make her appear as though she's more moderate and she's more centrist and she's more capable than she actually is.
Well, here's the bigger question, Nick. The bigger question is, she's been part of this whole internal thing the whole time, the last 4 years. She's been an integral part of, I mean, I don't think that the vice president lives inside the president's pocket, but I mean, you have contact every week, at least probably 2 or 3 times a week. And so she knew, she had to know. She could not operate in a vacuum and know. And so she perpetuated the same lie that all the inner circle was saying, because the vice president has got to be kind of on in the inner circle, right? I mean, she is the vice president. I mean, so the most worrying thing to me about this whole thing is that she was part and parcel of this whole cover up.
That's right. Yeah, it's been a cover up from the start. And, she participated in it willfully. And, Peltola in our own state participated in it willfully. She came out and said that Joe Biden was one of the smartest, sharpest people that she had met in D.C. Those are her words. It's a direct quote from Mary Peltola. And this is someone who had numerous interactions with President Biden over the course of the last couple of years. And it's documented in White House visitor logs and elsewhere. And she was willing to go out and perpetuate that lie. And, this is what we're seeing is not unique to Peltola. It's not unique to Kamala Harris. It seems to be a quality of the hard left, that they believe their lies to the public are justifiable for a greater purpose, that the end justifies the means. And these are not people that we can trust. They're not people that we can trust with Alaska. They're certainly not people we can trust with our nation, because they have demonstrated time and again that they're willing to lie to our face and put a smile on their face while they do it in order to achieve their political outcomes. And that's a dangerous set of people to be running the country, in my opinion.
So what would I hate to say this. What would a Kamala Harris presidency look like? I mean, for Alaska? I mean, we've already had some struggles, but in your mind, what would a Kamala Harris presidency look like for the state of Alaska?
Well, I think Kamala Harris would attempt to finish the job that Joe Biden started. And Joe Biden, from day one, he shut down development in the 1002 area of ANWR. Day one, he went after the King Cove Road. It wasn't long after that he shut down access to the Ambler mining district through the road that's guaranteed to Alaskans under ANILCA. So it's not a surprise that Joe Biden has done this, right? One of the first votes he took in Congress as a young senator in 1973 was to vote against the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. So this is consistent with Joe Biden's past behavior, but Kamala Harris has been right there the entire time. She is beholden to the radical environmental extremists in the lower 48 and beyond, and has no love for our state. She will do anything that she has to do to maintain power, to raise money, to appease the people that she is subservient to, which are the hard environmental left. And remember, Kamala Harris got her start in politics in San Francisco. She's a San Francisco Democrat, just like Nancy Pelosi. San Francisco Democrats don't have any love for our state. They don't want to see development here. They don't want to see growth here. In fact, and we've talked about this before on the show, but it definitely bears repeating. When you think about the left and their actions against Alaskan development, we have the strongest environmental record going, not just in the United States, but worldwide. We develop our resources responsibly. So if you care about the earth, wouldn't you want the resources of this earth to be developed in the most responsible jurisdictions? You would demand that the work be done in a place like Alaska, but they shut Alaska down. So is it really about the environment? It can't be about the environment, because they're pushing that work to places like China. They're pushing that to places like Iran, where they don't have any love for our nation, but they don't have any environmental standards, at least not to our level. And so it's really not about the earth, is it? It couldn't be
No.
about the earth. It's about a political outcome. It's about taking resource jobs that tend to vote conservative off the table so that you can flip Alaska blue and get 2 more Senate seats. And the people of Alaska are suffering for this political football that gets played with our state year in and year out.
Nick Begich is our guest, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. We're just talking about the flip in the presidential election and what could that mean. When we come back, we're going to talk about our favorite topic between Nick and I, and that is arithmetic. Yeah. You know, math is hard to argue with, although people try to. I mean, who are we? Terrence Howard? 2 + 2 is 5. We're going to make that work right now. All right, we're going to be back with more right after this. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
It's a series of tubes. I mean, we're going to explain that to you somehow. Big letters, big words.
Synergy.
Synergy. All right. Nick Begich is our guest. I mean, Nick, I really, at this point, I just throw my hands up in the air and I go, how can anybody take any of this stuff seriously? I mean, the candidates that are running around saying, this is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Really? I thought you were supposed to vote in a democracy. Maybe I'm getting the wrong idea here. And then, of course, the same ones that says that democracy is on the line here. If we vote for Trump, then, that's the end of the republic and yada, yada, yada. I find it ironic that these are the same people that are out there, doing this kind of stuff. And like I said, she has to have known what's going on. That's been the biggest stumbling block for me in my mind, trying to figure this out. She had to have known, and they thought she was going to be the best candidate for this job. I mean, that'd be the first question that I'd ask. Anything, I'd be like, how could you not have? You worked with the president every week. You met with him. You were part of his bidders. How did you not know?
And clearly she did. Right. And I think the challenge that most normal people who are not steeped in politics, who don't make this their daily bread, right? They look at this, it's very hard for people to understand because we don't think that way, right? We don't think about ways to deceive the public. We don't think about ways to amass more power. We don't think about ways to play political chess to put ourselves in more power. So, when we judge the political world with normal, everyday American values, none of it makes sense. If you want to make sense of the political world, you have to force yourself to start thinking, okay, what would be better for them? When you understand that lens, the world through that lens, all of it starts to make sense. And, why would Kamala lie? Because she needs to perpetuate a lie. Why would Kamala put herself forward in the way that she did and delay this action from Joe Biden? Why would they throw him out in front of the press a little bit early for a debate, earliest debate in modern times? It all starts to make sense when you understand that this is a political chess match that's being played and there's power to be had. And because it doesn't make sense to the rest of us. We look at this and say, why would you do that? You only do that to achieve this political outcome.
We're going to get to that, Greg. Greg just asked a question that we went off on Friday. I lost my mind on Friday over that. We're going to talk about it. No, I agree with you. What if, the question is, what if I told you that they were all in it together and they're doing it on purpose? That was my, that was the old quote from one of my old listeners. He actually gave me a button. They're all in it together and they're all doing it on purpose. And I'm like, well, that's a little paranoid. maybe not. I mean, maybe not in the long run.
Well, there's a quote by George Carlin, who I love. I thought he had great stand up. And he said, "Hey, it's a big club, and you're not in it." And unfortunately, you see that play out over and over and over again. That a lot of these people, they have their own interest in mind, and the public is a means to an end for them. It's sad, but it is true.
I mean, and I agree. I mean, this again goes back to why we look at probably 80 to 90% of politicians are all sociopathic anyway. That's just because, again, it's about, what can I do for me lately? What have I done for myself lately? Which is, again, the vast majority, unfortunately, of politicians are that way. Especially career politicians. That's what career politicians are what really caused me to open my eyes in that. All right, here we go. That means it's time to get back into it. Nick Begich is our guest. We are going to talk about that, Greg, in the final segment of the show, but we got to get to the math first because markets are down, debt is up, we got a lot of problems. We're going to talk about that to begin with. Let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's go. Here we go. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. I hate the countdown. Let's do it right now.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Yep. He actually made a joke about something about being Epstein during that thing, and I just couldn't put that together. He goes, "Oh, who's your dad? What does that mean? I got Epstein?" Oh no, I just won't do that. Anyway, Nick Begich is our guest, candidate for U.S. Senate. Now I might put that together. Now that I've thought about it, it was pretty good stuff. Let's continue on, Nick. The thing that we love to talk about, you and I think, in fact, our first interview that you and I ever did, we got onto this jag about how arithmetic is real. I mean, don't tell your friends that math and arithmetic, they're real. And they're, and it just seems like that's a hidden secret to Washington, D.C. They just seem to think that they can continue to add zeros to the deficit and it will have zero consequences, right? Zeros are great. We love zeros. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. I mean, that
is not how it works. That is not how it works.
$35 trillion now. We're cranking up. It's $56 billion a minute or whatever kind of craziness it is that's getting added to. And, now the markets are in the tank, and we can't continue this way, Nick. We just cannot continue in this vein.
Yeah, there's this theme that we have been led to believe, and it's this idea that you can do whatever you want in DC, and it will not impact everyday life. It will not impact our as we go and come from work and we live our lives. DC is somehow separate. It's not separate. In fact, it's intimately intertwined, and we can see when the government goes out and they consistently spend more money than they have to spend, they create these deficits. In order to fill those deficits, they have to print money. And that money gets printed from the Federal Reserve and shot through the economy, and we get inflation, and then it just gets harder to live. Our standard of living drops. You can't afford the things that you used to be able to afford. You can't do the things that you were able to do before, not because the private sector has somehow caused a problem, but because government can't get their act together and actually live within their means. And you're right, the market's down hard today. It was down on Friday. And if you look at the underpinnings of why that is true, it's because of interactions, in this case, international interactions between what's been happening in monetary policy in Japan and what's been happening in monetary policy in the United States. Those two reserve banks, the Bank of Japan and our Federal Reserve, have had drastically different economic policies as it relates to interest rates. And the Bank of Japan corrected only by 0.25%, 25 basis points. They increased their interest rate, and it set off a chain of events that has caused absolute turmoil in the markets. And again, going back to the point I just made, these aren't private sector phenomena. These are purely government policies that make huge impacts on our daily life, and that's what we're seeing in the markets right now.
So the question, of course, becomes, I mean, Nick, how do we fix this? I mean, how do we have become, and I talk a lot about Alaska becoming a dependency state. But Alaska, it's like monkey see, monkey do. We're just emulating to a greater degree, I think, in some ways, what's going on in the lower 48. We've got the government involved in every aspect of our lives, and it just wants to continue to grow more and more. And people have become, they're inculcated to the idea of, I could do it on my own. That's become a foreign concept, where 5 generations of people being told in school that, the government is the answer to every question. No matter what the question is, the answer is government. So how do we pull this back? How do we reduce the debt? How do we reduce the deficit while maintaining a healthy and strong economy? And how are you, as one of 500, maniacs down there, going to be able to make all this work? I mean, how are we going to pull ourselves back from the brink? I mean, I keep using the train analogy, Nick, but I cannot get away from it. The bridge is out. We're in the locomotive, and we're like, well, the bridge is out. You may want to slow down. And Congress and all the politicians are there with shovels and coal and just going, it's going to be spectacular. We'll make that jump. We'll get across the gap. I mean, at what point do we push them out and grab the brake to try and at least stop us before we go over the edge?
Well, we're getting close, and I'll tell you, I think that if I didn't believe that one person could make a difference, I wouldn't be running for Congress. So I do believe that one person can make a difference. Yes, there's 535 members of Congress, 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate. They all think they have the answers. They're all there to represent their districts. But I believe that Alaska has a compelling story. It has a compelling story. And the Alaskan story can be America's story again if we can get somebody in the House that can start to tell it in the right way. We are the last frontier, north to the future. That is Alaska. We have all the resources that we need in order to be successful, not just for ourselves, but for the whole country. As we pivot out of China and we realign our supply chains, we have a generational opportunity in Alaska to reestablish the beginnings of those supply chains here. And I will tell you, it is simply the regulatory state that has prevented us from doing it. But when I say that this is the America story too, it's the regulatory overburden. It's the government that has prevented us from developing our own nation. And what they've done is that they've engaged in what I call regulatory arbitrage, where the rules are low and it's easier to do business somewhere else. And so businesses do business in other places like China, right? And that regulatory arbitrage, because the bureaucratic state has gotten so out of control in the United States, encourages work to leave our shores. And so it's going to take somebody, and this is the story that I want to tell in DC, it's going to take someone to be an evangelist for the American entrepreneur in Congress to say, look, we don't need the black hole of government to grow and grow and grow. It's going to suck all of the enterprising activity in our economy into one place, down the tubes. And we need to reduce that regulatory overburden so we can allow the innovation economy, that American spirit, to flourish again. And so I believe that, in some kind of a strange fractal sense, you might say, Alaska is the beginning of telling that story, that the Alaska innovation economy, the resources that we have here, it's a smaller part of the American story, that if we can get people to understand that unlocking Alaska is good for them, we can help to turn this country around and be a part of that process.
Well, it's got to be about bolstering the economy and developing new businesses and new you can't just be, at this point, it can't just be cuts overall. Cuts are a big part of it, but we've got to continue to expand the economy. The problem is the government is in the way of a lot of these economy, right? And so maybe is it a dismantling of the regulatory state in some way, as well as cuts? And not. I'm not looking for subsidies. I'm not looking for government grants. I'm not looking
Right,
for
right.
business loans. I'm not looking for. I'm looking for government to just get out of the way, and then to cut the spending, and then maybe those two things together would
Yes.
encourage that entrepreneurship and that stuff to go.
You got to remember, the government doesn't produce anything. It doesn't make anything. It takes and redistributes, right? It either takes through taxes or it takes through money printing, which is a backdoor tax through inflation, but it takes and it redistributes. It never produces anything. If you want to turn the ship around, you have to produce again. And that production can't come from government. It comes from the private side. And so we have to reduce the size of government. We have to reduce the regulatory overburden of government to make it easier to produce. But those are going to be the things that get us out of this mess. We're going to have to turn to businesses and innovators and say, okay, we need you to produce, and government, we need you to reduce your size and your footprint on our lives. So it's going to take both. You cannot print your way out of this because, again, it just creates additional taxes through inflation. It's a backdoor tax. You need discipline in the Congress, and you need people who are going to DC, not just from Alaska, but all over the country, that are less worried about their next election and more worried about our next generation of Americans.
That's what I mean. The part of the problem you just said, we got 500, you said you got 435 House members and 100 senators, and they're all out there fighting for their districts. And all I could think of is, are they really, or are they fighting for their parties? Because, we all saw the Thomas Massey, the Drain the Swamp videos where, he showed up, and within 2 days, they were like, okay, so here's what you got to do. You got to get on the phone and start raising money for the party and do it. And I'm like, wait a second. I thought we were supposed to be governing here. I mean, I thought we were supposed to be creating it. When did we get to the point of we're just raising money for the party and this is a party machine? I mean, the two-party system has busted us at this point. We're it's not working properly, and instead it's about retaining power than it is about good governance.
That's right. There's way too much money in politics. And so what happens is, and those are, if for folks listening, if you haven't seen the videos that Michael is talking about, strongly recommend go watch them because they really reveal what is happening behind the scenes in DC. I mean, it's a lot of times you think DC is what you see on Fox News or, pick your station, News Nation, Newsmax, whatever. That is not really DC. You should really watch these videos. You'll understand more about what's going on behind the scenes. But yeah, there's way too much money in politics. Don Young had a great idea. I felt like he said, the money that is raised for a congressional race should only come from the district. Right? It should only come from that congressional district. Why should we have 90% plus of the money that funds Alaskan races at the federal level come from outside of Alaska? Let the people of the district decide. Right?
Now, wait. I'm a radio guy. I make some money from that. I got to get that advertising dollar in there. Don't take away my ad dollars. But yeah, I mean, why? I mean, this was the whole thing about ranked choice. Somebody got in the room and a bunch of bigwigs in. They said, Alaska's a cheap date. Here's $7 million. Let's flip the state. And I mean, you're right. How much money from outside a race or a congressional district does there need to be? There shouldn't be any.
Think about this. Mary Peltola, in this election cycle, has raised more than $1 million from corporate PACs alone. She's raised more from corporate PACs than I have raised or Nancy Dahlstrom has raised. From corporate PACs alone. I mean,
right.
If you don't think that you owe
all
people,
of what you've raised is what I mean. I want to be clear here. From all of what you've raised, not just from
that's right.
Her corporate PAC contributions is larger than your entire war chest, is what you're saying.
Correct. That's correct. And she presents herself to the public as though she's, a moderate, isn't owned, all for Alaska, et cetera. 90+% of the money that she has raised has come from outside of Alaska. And it allows her to buy messaging that presents herself as 100% for Alaska. It's total baloney. And this isn't just true in this race. It's true in essentially all the races around the country. And so there is too much money in politics. And so it results in the situation where the committees, as soon as you show up on the Hill, they're saying, okay, jump in the booth. And I've actually seen these booths in person. They do exist. And
Right.
you go in there and you make phone calls. And the same thing's true at the DCCC as it is in the NRCC. They want you out there raising money so that they can go use it to win races or compete in swing districts. And the job of the member is not to raise money for other members. The job of the representative is to represent the people, to make good quality, long-term decisions in the best interest of the district that they represent and the nation that they're there to work for. And that is the job. The job is to legislate well. The job is to actually kill bad legislation. The job is to reduce regulation. And these people end up finding out when they show up that actually a huge part of their job ends up being raising money. And, when you think about that sort of, as you like to call it, a self-licking ice cream cone, you end up in this situation where it's power in order to pursue power, pursue power. And did you ever achieve anything? No.
You just consumed power. It's no longer the self-licking ice cream cone. My new favorite phrase is the doom loop. That's exactly what the doom loop.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate self-licking ice cream cone. All right, we got to go. Nick Begich is our guest. One final segment dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Nick, you're a lot more optimistic than I am. I use the whole train analogy, and I think it was Rick who basically said, we've already gone over the edge at this point. We're on the way down to the chasm bottom, and we just can't see it yet. We know it's coming, and you're a lot more optimistic because, again, we have a nation of people who for multiple generations have been told that government is the answer to everything and that we've all got to do it for the common good and everything else. And we've got politicians who've been spending well beyond their means for decades and decades and decades, and they just cannot conceive. And, we literally are. I think these politicians, some of them, to be cynical, are doing it on purpose. But others, I think, fully believe that they think we're too big to fail. They just can't comprehend that. They're like, oh, no, it would never happen. We can spend whatever we want because it would never come off. The wheels would never come off the bus. But the problem is that I'm not sure that we haven't gone too far forward to actually go back. That's the danger.
There are consequences that we will suffer and are suffering as a result of these actions that we're not going to get away from. There's no easy way out. Let me say that. There are harder ways out than others, but there's no easy way out. Here's why I'm optimistic. The productive capacity of the American worker has not gone anywhere. The resources of our nation, natural resources, have not gone anywhere. Those the incredible productivity of the U.S. farmer has not gone anywhere, and that's a huge advantage for us. We sometimes overlook that, but we have the productive capacity. We have the ability to continue to create value in the world, and we will. And so the challenge that we have is a fiscal and monetary challenge. We have political challenges. But the ingredients are still there for a strong America. So if we have to go through a situation where the dollar loses its reserve currency status, we see inflation, run even higher than it has in the last few years. Those will obviously be bad outcomes, but we can get out of that situation long-term by making better political decisions, adopting a sounder fiscal and monetary policy, embracing sound money, and restricting our own ability to attempt to print out our way out of situations. If we do those things, we'll still be successful. We just may have to go through some very rough seas to get there. But again, I'm optimistic because I still believe in the power of the American ideals and the American workforce.
A return to sound money would go a long way towards it. But again, there's going to be so much resistance because that takes away their favorite way to fund everything, right? I mean, that's the thing. You've got a group in there. And I am with you. I think that eventually what's going to have to happen, and Kevin, you're right. I'm not saying that the Republic is not worth saving. That's not what I'm saying. And no, Terry, I'm not saying that it's pointless. I'm saying that we're in for a rough ride, is what I say. I think we're in for a rough ride. Nick's right. Americans will come together like very few nations in the world. We have done it time and time and time again in our history where something happens and we come together. You know, we're just separate people until something happens, and then we come together as a fist and we pull together. You know, 9/11, Pearl Harbor, you know, attack. I mean, whatever it is, we come together and we do it. And I think we still have a great opportunity. The problem is that I think that we are refusing to learn from the lessons of history, and we'll be faced to make another hard choice that when that monetary bottom falls out, which I don't know if we could even change it at this point. It's going to be some tough times. If we lose world reserve currency status, the dollar will no longer be supreme, and it could be runaway inflation. It could be a lot of other things. And maybe that will force us back to sound monetary policy. I don't know, Nick.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I've often thought, in our privilege of having the world's reserve currency status are also the seeds of the problems that we see today, right? Because
True.
Other countries don't have the ability to print and have fewer consequences like we do. And so we've allowed ourselves to believe that these policies, this expansive amount of government spending will have no real impact on us because it hasn't in the last year, or the last 5 years, or the last 10 years. Therefore, we can do this forever. And you even see economic theories develop around it, like modern monetary theory, MMT, where PhD level economists will try to present the idea that debt is money and that we can just print our way out of everything. It's nonsense. And now we're finally seeing that our actions do have consequences. And part of that challenge that we have in our nation is we have been given the privilege and the trust by the rest of the world to hold the reserve currency status. And I think truly that is part of our problem right now.
All right, hold the line. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
But they have PhDs, Nick. But they have PhDs. Debt is money. Because they have PhDs. God. They said it. Debt is money. You guys just missed the whole back and forth during the break. That was just epic. You should go back and listen to it on the podcast. Right, Nick? Everybody should go back and listen to it on the podcast.
The podcast has a lot of additional content. Sometimes it's even more interesting than what's on the radio. You got to go back and listen to it. There's some good stuff.
Not lying. He's not lying. Sometimes there's some good stuff back in there. All right. Well, let's continue on here. Final segment of the show. I do want to give you a little bit of free reign, but two things I want to talk about. First of all, congratulations. You got the District 6 endorsement. And then you got the other one from the interior as well, right? So you got
That's right. District 36, which is interesting fact, the largest House district in America.
Wow.
It's larger than most states, actually.
Yeah.
It's an honor to receive the support of conservatives, of Republicans around the state. This is our fifth House district that we've received an endorsement from. And, I understand there's several others that are looking at making similar endorsements. But look, at the end of the day, this is about getting out and voting, right? Make sure that you are voting. Today, is the first day of early voting,
Right.
and people all over the country are saying it. I'm going to say it too. Get your vote in.
Yeah.
If something
Absolutely.
happens, you have an emergency, you're out of town, something happens, and you're like, oh no, I forgot to vote. Well, your vote's not going to count. And this primary is important because I've made a commitment that if another person on the right side of the aisle finishes ahead of me in this primary, I'll get out of the primary because I
Right.
think that a head-to-head, one-on-one versus Mary Peltola gives us the best opportunity to get this seat back, get some common sense, conservative leadership back in DC on behalf of Alaska. And Mary Peltola is not that person. We got to get her out. So whatever it takes to do that, we got to do it. And that's why this primary is important. Make sure if you have time today, go vote. You can vote early and just check it off the list. And then you can use your time to go tell your friends and family and colleagues and neighbors and others to go vote as well.
Absolutely. Get out there and get your vote on for sure. But you got to feel like you're kind of got like do you have a trophy room for all your endorsements? Because I mean, it just seems like, you're racking them up left and right, except for one, Nick. And when I heard about this on Friday, I'll be honest, I lost my mind. It was the first time in 20 years I probably nearly swore live on the air. I was so agitated by it. And I'm talking about the endorsement by the National Rifle Association for Nancy Peltola. Now, let me just preface all this by saying the NRA is now dead to me. I will never give another dollar to the NRA. Period. They were fighting for another chance, and I was watching them and everything else. But that to me means they are so out of touch with anything that's going on in real life that I'm done. I'm done with that. But give me your thoughts on this and where you're coming from here.
Yeah, obviously it was more than disappointing. It's totally inconsistent with Mary Peltola's record and their assessment of Mary Peltola's position. Even just a couple of years ago, she had a D rating from the NRA 2 years ago.
Yeah, just 2 years
ago. She supports universal background checks. She wants to see, I'm going to use her words, not my words, her words, that she wants to curtail the sales of, and I'm using air quotes for people not watching the podcast, but assault rifles, right? This is her views. And for the NRA to turn around and not just give her a high rating, but to endorse her over two people who are 100% 2A, that's beyond the pale. And it's pure politics. Let me tell you something. It's pure politics. They're looking for a way. They wanted to find a Democrat out there somewhere that they could support to try to prove to people around the nation, hey, we're not partisan. Well, I got news for you, folks. If you're voting for Hakeem Jeffries 19 times, you're voting for Hakeem Jeffries' agenda when it comes to the Second Amendment. And if you think the Democrats are going to be supportive of the Second Amendment, you're not paying attention. And Hakeem Jeffries has it out for our Second Amendment rights, and Mary Peltola has supported him consistently during her short time in Congress. The Gun Owners of America actually gave Mary Peltola an F this cycle, an F rating. I have an A rating. She has an F rating because of her views on the Second Amendment. And
Right.
So, when you see this from the National Rifle Association, look, I'm a member myself. I couldn't believe what I saw. I've never seen Mary Peltola at a Friends of the NRA banquet.
Right.
I've been many times, right, to support the organization. And it's not the organization, let me be clear, that I'm supporting. It's our Second Amendment rights that I'm supporting. And ostensibly, they're supposed to be a leader in protecting those rights. And I'm disappointed. I know a lot of Alaskans are disappointed. I've had members of the House reach out to me saying, hey, I'm going to have to take the endorsement that they gave me in my House race off my signs, off my website. There's people writing in all over the state. And I know this, they're telling me they're asking to revoke their own lifetime NRA memberships.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is nearly impossible at this point. We found that out when the whole LaPierre thing came about, again, and they were working towards, a resurrection, and now they've totally shot themselves in the foot. And the GOA, I mean, that's where I'm spending my money. I'm a life member of the GOA anyway. And so that is the true no compromise gun lobby out there. as well. But it's frustrating, Nick, to watch this kind of stuff happen. This is the same thing. I've been mad at the NRA since 1986. I still gave him money for years, but now this is it. They're dead to me at this point. All right. Well, I want to give you, we got about 4 minutes here. So I want to give you a couple minutes to talk about anything that you want to talk about. And then we could summate in the last couple minutes. So anything else that is on your mind right now, Nick, that it's a hot issue for you, give it to me now.
Yeah, I think we talked about economics, we talked about the state, we talked about the importance of balancing the budget and opening up Alaska, but we're also in the midst of a massive global conflict breakout. We've got issues in places we haven't even talked about yet. They're just now hitting the news. Yeah. Venezuela, Bangladesh, right? Taiwan, Israel, and the entire Middle East. Ukraine and Russia is still an issue. Right, South and North Korea with 250 ballistic missile launchers being moved to the border in North Korea. We have enormous problems, enormous potential for global conflict, and we got a moron who's out of his mind and out to lunch at the helm in the form of Joe Biden. And Mary Peltola and her allies in Congress and Kamala Harris have been covering for this guy from before he ran for president. And these kinds of lies are putting our nation and our world in jeopardy. We can't continue to elect people who are going to lie to our face in order to maintain and grow their power base. It's making the world a dangerous place. It's making it harder to live. It's putting our investment portfolios at risk, as we've seen on Friday and today. There's a lot on the line in this election. There's a lot on the line for Alaska, our nation, and the world. And the truth of the matter is that the Democrats have not been friends to the American people. They've lied to our faces. They've done so in order to maintain power for another election cycle. But they're gonna take what's great about this country and flush it down the tubes if we let them. If you are out there and you're listening today and you're wondering what you can do, you've got to vote. You've got to get involved. You've got to tell your friends and your neighbors and your colleagues and your family and have the difficult conversations so that they know how important their vote is too. We can't afford to let this continue for another 4 years. And this election is our opportunity to change it. We hear from the left that democracy matters, but they pick and choose their candidates. They prevented any competitive activity or any discussion around their lead candidate and swapped them out at the last second with less than 100 days to go before the election to try to fool the public one more time. And enough's enough. We've got to take a stand. We've got to stand up. And that's why I'm running, because I've had it with that BS that's coming from DC. We need people who are real people, who are not worried about whether they get elected 15 times. They're worried about what happens to their kids and their grandkids, your kids and your grandkids, and the future of this state.
Yeah.
And I want to see us succeed. I want to see us prosper. I want to see us do well. But to do it, you got to have tough people that are going to go down to DC, tell Alaska's story, and help right this ship.
Nick Begich, candidate for Congress. It is the pick one primary. You can only pick one. This is not ranked choice. You can only pick one. I pick Nick. Do you? And I pick Nick, not the basket, but the guy, right? That was how. Get it done. Go out there. Early voting begins today. Nick Begich, candidate for U.S. House. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you coming on board.
Thanks, Michael.
Folks, we are out of time. Tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story. We're back with more tomorrow, 6 a.m., bright and early. See you then. Dude. I mean, it's so hard to watch. It's like you can't turn away. You're watching a train wreck in slow motion and you cannot look away. And the worst part is, I mean, I'm not the guy that said I told you so, but I've been talking about these issues for 15, 20 years. And I'm like, guys, stop. Just pull the lever.
Yeah, it's inevitable. That's what's so frustrating, is that it's so obvious. If you're paying attention, it's so obvious that we're headed down this road, and yet we're still headed down this road. Why? And the only explanation is because the people in charge, the people making these decisions, they're either not capable of making the decisions, which is true in some case. They don't really understand what's going on, or they don't care enough about what's going on to actually fix it. And I asked Don Young one time what his thoughts were about a particular member of Congress, and it was AOC. And I said, well, doesn't she frustrate you? Isn't it irritating to deal with her and her policies and what she said? He said, you know what? I'm not frustrated at AOC. I'm frustrated at the people who sent AOC to Congress. And in that statement, I believe that what he was really saying was, these people are a reflection of us. If it weren't AOC, it'd be another person that we'd call something else, right?
They're indicative of the problem that I was talking about earlier, this dependency and this inculcation that government is the answer for everything. And even, God love him, Don Young. I mean, Don Young should have stepped away from that seat before he should have stepped away and ceded that power to groom somebody, to bring somebody up, to work with them, and to transition that power over rather than leaving the vacuum, which is how we ended up with Mary Peltola, right? It's the same kind of thing, holding on to power. That's the problem.
The final, this is my opinion, but I think a lot of people will agree with this. The final responsibility of a leader is to transition that leadership responsibility to the next person. That's part of the job. And it's not always possible, right? There are people, I'll tell you what, my grandfather was in office. He disappeared on a plane flight. There wasn't an opportunity for that. That's life. But when you have an opportunity to do that, you've got to take it, and you got to make sure that, if you care about, and I hate using this word, but if you care about your legacy, part of your legacy is making sure that it continues forward. And Mary Peltola has wandered around the state saying how she's Don Young's legacy. She's not. Don Young would have never voted with these people. In fact, he didn't. We know that for a stone cold fact. He didn't vote 90% of the time with Nancy Pelosi. He didn't vote 80% of the time with Joe Biden. That's not what he did. That's not his legacy. That's not a continuation of what he was trying to do in the Congress. And but this is what happens if we don't transition responsibly that mantle of leadership to the next generation. It's just things can go wild and unpredictable ways. Who would have ever imagined that we'd elect a hard left Democrat from Alaska to represent us? And now it's going to be harder to get her out. She's got millions upon millions of dollars that have come in from outside Alaska to try to tell Alaskans what to believe. And media is a powerful thing, and it's a hard thing to fight against. Alaskans are smart people. We know what's going on, but when you've got $10 million in your back pocket to tell lies and distortions about your record, you got to have the ability on the other side of the aisle to compete with that. And so, I think we're in a good position to get the seat back. I think we're in a good position to win, but we shouldn't have been in this position in the first place.
Right. And I agree with that. And now the fact that Nancy is not committed to the same thing that you have, which is like, basically if she loses the primary, she's going to drop out. It's going to make it more difficult. But again, you guys are fighting an uphill battle to begin with, just based on the amount of PAC money that's starting to come in. And I work in radio, so I see this. We're already seeing this PAC money starting to come in, and it's all for Peltola. Why? Because Alaska's seat is vulnerable, and they don't want to lose it. And so we're already seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars being pumped in here that basically name you and Nancy and Gerald Hikas as vote against, and it's because they don't want to lose the power. And that's what it is. Final thoughts, Nick, here.
That's 100% true. I mean, when you think about the world from the Democrats' point of view, they're worried, and they should be worried, that they're going to lose the presidency. I think Donald Trump will win. I strongly believe that the Senate is going to go Republican. I think that's pretty clear. All you need is West Virginia and Montana, and that's done. You've flipped the Senate. and a couple more seats make it even stronger. So their last firewall against a conservative agenda is the House, because in the House there's only a 3 or 4 seat majority, depending on who's resigning this week, right? And so that thin majority is their only opportunity to flip a body and stop the unwind of all of their policies over the last 4 years. And that's what makes Alaska's seat probably more important than it's been in our lifetimes in this election cycle. And they're going to do every single thing they can to hold on to this seat. They're going to lie. They're going to obfuscate. They're going to point fingers. They're going to raise tens of millions of dollars from outside. This will, and it already is actually, it's already the most expensive House race in Alaska's history. And I bet you by the time we're done, you could take all the last 10 House races, total them all up, and there will be more spent in this House race than the prior 10 combined. So, yeah, you know, you talk about money in politics.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's a lot of money.
You know, this is a David and Goliath battle, I will tell you. But hey, David won that fight, and we can win this fight. But it's going to take everyone. That's why it's so important. If you haven't gone out and voted, if you're not an absentee ballot voter, get your early vote in. I know a lot of us are people who prefer to vote on election day, but sometimes I hear the stories all the time. Oh, I was going to vote, but I forgot. Oh, I was going to vote, but you know, someone that I knew was in the hospital, or I had to run out because someone needed me out of state, or I had a last minute trip. Just get it done. There's time right now. If you got time right now, just get it done. And you can bank that vote, and it will be counted on election night if you early vote right now. So you don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to count on election night. It will. And then you can use that time to go tell other people about how important it is for them to show up and vote. And you can use that time, you know, to help drive our vote totals up and make sure that we can get this seat back.
Nick Begich, candidate for Congress. What was the first? Somebody asked a question. In fact, I'm sorry, Nick. Somebody asked a question early on, like right when you came on, and they said, how is Nick going to overcome the name recognition, which we've talked about in the past? You and I have talked about, but it was, I thought, oh, that's an interesting question that I should have asked, and I didn't. And I'm trying to figure out who asked it. But it was Jeannie. First question: how do you propose to overcome your last name? How do you win people over? Can you leave us with that thought?
Yeah, I think it's doing things like this. I do more radio all over the state than any candidate probably ever has. Anyone that I've ever seen. Right. I'm doing 3 hours a week of radio, and it's everywhere. And so that's an important aspect. You know, and it's also about enumerating my policies, being very clear about what I believe, going down into the details so that people understand that I've studied these issues. I continue to study these issues. I keep myself current on current events as much as one can when they're running in a race like this. It's about traveling the state, meeting people one-on-one, you know, not being afraid to dive into, you know, to a fair in Ketchikan and then turning around and going to, you know, Deltona days and going all over the state to make sure that people have a chance to meet me and talk to me. But it's not something that I can do by myself. It's also something that people who have had an opportunity to chat with me and are supportive, they need to go do that too and have those conversations.
Right.
But you know, I would say this: it's a double-edged sword. You know, people know the name. Maybe they like it. Maybe they don't like it. But for other candidates, you know, nobody knows who they are. So they have a different challenge. They've got to go out and they've got to try to build name ID and recognition, and then, you know, support base and all the things. And that's a challenge too. But you know, I don't think this election is going to come down to a last name. I certainly hope that it doesn't. I hope it comes down to policies. I hope it comes down to what people believe and what they want to do, what their plans are for our state and our nation. And I think that because I've been out campaigning now for what feels like forever. You know, I started working on Don's campaign in 2020 and then carried that forward. Hopefully people have had an opportunity to do their own research and their homework and see what I think.
Well, I mean, I agree. Fat Ray says people in my office still say Nick is a Democrat based on the name. That's like saying Kennedy. I mean, there's a Republican senator named Kennedy, right? And so
he's a good one too. Yeah, from Louisiana.
So you
Yeah.
can't just say, I mean, it is what it is. Do your homework. If people are going to get hung up on a name, I can't tell you how many times I've introduced myself and somebody says, "Are you related to that David Dukes guy who was the
Oh, my
KKK
gosh.
guy?" Yeah, that's me. He's my brother. No, of course not. But it is what it is. You're going to do what you can do. That's all you can do.
Yep.
I just tell people he's the other Begich. He's the black sheep of the family, right? It's you're the other Begich.
My dad is a libertarian, former AIP guy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
People say, oh, well, the apple doesn't. Well, he started it, right? He left the Democrat Party many years ago, decades ago, and went a completely different direction. And I tell people I'm a Republican with libertarian streaks. I want the government small and out of my way.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
and so, but yeah, it turns out that there tends to be people on both sides of the aisle in every family. I'm definitely on the other side of of the aisle from my dad's side of the family.
Isn't that the stereotypical Thanksgiving dinners? We don't talk about politics because every side is represented at that table. You know what I mean? So nobody's monolithic in their viewpoints with the last name. I got to tell you, that's how it works. All right, Nick. Well, thank you, my friend. As always, it's a pleasure to speak with you. And I got to go out and get voting this week. I got to vote early and vote often. That's what I got to do. Got to go get more ballots here to make it happen. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
All right, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you later. All right, folks, we got more coming up. We're out of time for today. The Michael Duke Show continues tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. Rumble's up. If you want to talk about Rumble or try Rumble tomorrow, just go check me out over there. I don't know how it works. I don't think that the comments are working back and forth yet. We'll have to take a look, Yeah, we'll have to see. Yes, I'm running way over. We got to go. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Welcome.